Welcome to the Ranter's house. Not so much of a rant here, but more of a ramble, okay? Let's get into this. Now, I think a lot of people who've watched this movie will look at the title of this video and think this is just me joking about, or it's some kind of a parody, or I'm being sarcastic or ironic. But actually, no, I'm actually being quite sincere. I do like the movie, the British 1983 movie Hawk the Slayer. I do. I like it. I like it rather a lot. I've liked it for a long time. I liked it the moment I very first watched it, which was quite a while ago now. I think it was about the late 90s. I think my dad taped it on a VHS tape. It was on, television, and he taped it and said, "Oh, here, Sean, have a look at this. It's a fantasy film. You might like it. It's a bit like those Lord of the Ring books, The Hobbit and all the other Tolkien works that I was into at the time." And so I sat down. I remember sitting down and watching. I actually came home from school and sat down and watched Hawk the Slayer, and I enjoyed it. And I know that probably to a lot of people who watched the movie and didn't like it, and I understand. I get it. If you watched the movie and didn't like it, and thought it was badly made, it was cheap, and the acting is wooden, I understand why you didn't like it. I really do. I think it's a niche movie. I think it is. You either like it or you don't. You're either into that sort of thing or you are not. Some people, they like, dramas that are well written, well acted. Some people want to watch a fantasy movie that's got a lot of money put into it, so it looks good. And, there's a lot of really good fantasy movies out there. There are fantasy movies that have got good acting, good actors, good special effects, you name it. So, I imagine people will watch, or they might give Hawk the Slayer a chance and watch it and be like, what the heck is this? What on earth? It's like Blackadder or something, but not as funny, or... and I get it. I do get it. And it may seem strange that I like this movie, that it's one of my favorite fantasy movies. That probably does sound strange. And, that's just the way it is. That's just my opinion, how I feel, my memories, and nothing's going to change that. Nothing's going to change it. And sometimes I do sit back and I do think, what was it, or what is it still about Hawk the Slayer that I actually liked? Because I remember showing this movie to some friends, and they didn't get it. They didn't get it at all. They thought it was, they really didn't like it. It was a struggle to get them to sit through the whole thing. And they couldn't understand why I liked it. And at the time, I'll be honest with you, at the time I didn't know either what it was I liked about the movie. I remember even talking about it once in a sort of it was at college, and we were talking about movies that we liked, and I did this little edit of Hawk the Slayer, bringing in a VHS tape, and we had this strange machine where we were able to record scenes from one tape to the other. It was bizarre. This really big, weird machine. It makes you boggles your mind how great technology is now. It's so easy to edit things now compared to how it was. How long was this? Like, I guess 20 years ago now. Gosh. And back then I couldn't explain to people why it was I liked the movie so much, but I think I know what it is now. I do. You rewind the clock, you go back to the old days, so the 80s or the 90s, and movies and entertainment was pretty thin on the ground, if I remember. There wasn't. I live in the United Kingdom. We had about 4 television channels. Eventually we got 5, but it was 4 channels for a long time. Some people had Sky if they had a bit of money in their back pockets. We didn't have Sky. And, as a child growing up, I used to watch a lot of repeats of these older sort of sci-fi movies. Movies that came out from the 50s, 60s, 70s. I remember watching a lot of these dinosaur movies with the American actor Doug McClure in movies like The Land That Time Forgot, The Land That People Forgot, Journey to the Earth's Core. I remember watching movies like those James Mason movies like Journey to the Center of the Earth, 20,000 Leagues to the Bottom of the Sea. Actually, 20,000, in all fairness, 20,000 Leagues to the Bottom of the Sea is a Disney movie. They probably put a lot of money into that one, but just give you an example of kind of movies I used to watch. I remember watching The Lost World, where the dinosaurs in that movie, it's about a group of explorers that get stuck on this plateau where these dinosaurs are still roaming around. And the dinosaurs in that movie are all, they're basically lizards. Regular lizards and reptiles. There's a Komodo dragon and a baby alligator in one scene, and they use camera trickery to make the lizards look really big, make them look larger than the human actors. It's really cheesy. But these were the kind of movies I used to watch as a child. I used to watch them. They were just movies. They were on TV. I enjoyed them. I probably took them seriously. Like now, for example, if I was to watch them now, I would laugh and joke, and I'd see the silliness of it and the goofiness of it. But back then, as a child, I was watching these movies and taking it seriously. And also, I used to watch a lot of classic Doctor Who. And the classic Doctor Who, like the John Pertwee and the Tom Baker stuff, and going even further back than that, Patrick Troughton and all that, William Hart and all that, it was, the classic Doctor Who was very low budget, An alien planet was simply nothing but a quarry near a mountain somewhere in Wales. It was all very cheap. Cheap sets, cheap costumes. Killer robots were just giant dustbins rolling around. But this is what I used to watch as a kid. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is I grew up watching cheap, goofy, most of the time cheap, goofy movies. And really good movies, the ones, like Star Wars and Alien, Alien, Terminator. Those movies were sort of few and far between and did not come out that often. They were like an exciting event when they came out. So in between those good movies, you watch the cheesy movies. So when I watched Hulk the Slayer, it was just another one of those kinds of that same familiar type of film I was used to watching. So and I think that was one of the reasons why I like it so much. It's cheap. It's British. It's got this charm about it. It's got this strange charm going on. I don't know. It's just maybe other people can see it. I can see it. I can see heart in this movie. There is a heart there. There's heart in this movie there. I really do feel that there is. I really feel that the writer and the director really did want to make something more out of Hulk the Slayer. I feel like they wanted to, create a series out of this. And I can remember watching the movie, and if you watch the movie, if you ever take time to watch it, there are little references every now and then to territories and, from different parts of the land, and little tidbits, little bits of history sprinkled about, which kind of give you a glimpse into a larger world. And I think that's what it's one of those things that made the original Star Wars movie so interesting and appealing at the time when it came out. Was that it would refer to past past events and other characters, and gave the viewer this idea that there's a bigger, wider universe out there. It adds to the magic of the movie, and that's what made the first Star Wars movie magical. One of the little ingredients that made that movie magical, and Hawk the Slayer has a similar sort of thing going on. Okay, all right, I'll admit it's not as good, but it's there. The one particular element that I enjoyed the most about Hawk the Slayer was the friendship, camaraderie between the main characters. That would be Hawk himself, Hawk the Slayer, played by an American actor, John Terry. The camaraderie between Hawk the Slayer and his followers, Gort the giant, Crow the elf, and Bolden the dwarf. And I enjoyed these characters. I enjoyed the way they interact, the way they would interact with each other through the movie. And the dwarf and the giant used to joke about with one another and argue over food. There's a charm to it. There really is. I really feel there's a charm there. It's like the production team and the writers, they knew they didn't have enough money. They didn't have a lot of money to play about with. This movie was not going to be like, say, the Conan, the Schwarzenegger Conan movie that they made in 1980, the early 80s, 1980, or the Excalibur movie. It wasn't going to be one of those big budget movies where they could have a lot of action scenes, epic action, really amazingly choreographed fighting sequences. That they knew they weren't going to have any of that in Hawk the Slayer, but they sort of made up for it with the charm, with the character interaction, and the way the characters were all like, you felt that they were like all best buddies with each other, and it's nice. I like it. I enjoyed that. Watching it now, it just gives me this warm glow. It just makes me feel I wish I could have been one of them. I wish I could have been a warrior and traveled with them. They just seem like a real great band of friends. People I'd like to hang out with, go on adventures with, and I enjoyed this. And that they travel around what looks to me like the same patch of British countryside, and again, with the limited budget and production, they tried to make this wood that they're filming in the movie, and they tried to make it look like a huge they tried to make it look like this huge landscape, this huge world, and it's just it's so amusing. It's so amusing to me now. It really is. When you think about the more recent sort of fantasy movies, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, of course, that one springs to mind. Where they filmed that movie all over New Zealand, and Hawk the Slayer was filmed in some park somewhere. They've got to try to make it look like this huge realm. I don't know. I love it. I just do enjoy it. It's just quaint. Again, it's just charming. There's something nice about it. It's got this British feel. It's got this. It's a strange looking movie. I don't know what type of camera they used to film it. It looks odd. It's almost got this strange sort of British sitcom look, but yet it's not a sitcom. It's a movie. It's trying to be like a movie. It's trying to be like a Hollywood movie, but it's just not quite there. It's not quite that. It kind of it looks like you could be turning on a British TV show, I don't know, Last of the Summer Wine or something like that, and there's a band of warriors roaming around. It's a strange movie. There's something odd about it. It's quite violent as well. There's no blood. You don't see any blood, but there's a lot of fighting. The battles are, they're a bit, they're very bitty. It's very scrappy. It's Hawk and his mates cutting down a group of thugs. I enjoy it. I think it's amusing. I find the fights amusing. They are violent. A lot of people die in it. Just lots of death. So it's not really a movie for kids. I don't think. It's a niche movie. It is. It's an audible movie. I don't think everyone's going to be. No, not everyone is going to be into it. I don't think so. I think that the producers, I think they had a vision of an epic fantasy, but they didn't have the money, and they did the best that they could. They gave it this sort of like Western flair. There seems to be a lot of like a sort of like a Western style of movie, you know, the old Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns. There's a lot of scenes where Hawk is stood there and he's like staring down his enemy, and they're looking at one another, and their fingers are twitching, and who's going to move for their weapon first. And it all seems it's I find it amusing, but I imagine someone else watching the movie who is new to all this and is not me, they might find it all a bit daft and a bit silly. And I get that, I do, honestly. But I always found it funny. It's cheesy, yeah, it's cheesy as well. It's extremely cheesy. It's corny. The dialogue is bizarre. The characters, they say a lot. There's a lot of strange lines, you know. They use the word fine. It's a fine brew, a fine beer, my fine friend. There's a lot of that going on. A fine sword, a fine day, you know, all this kind of stuff. And you know, at the beginning of the movie, and Hawk rescues this sorceress, who they simply refer to as the woman. Throughout the whole movie, they just call her woman. So yes, this was definitely a movie that was made in the 80s. It wouldn't fly nowadays. And she's been, you know, these thugs, they're gonna put her to death, and Hawk, you know, he bursts in and he's like, "Why do you treat the woman this way?" The dialogue is so corny. It's like, it's trying to be Shakespeare, but it's, you know, it's not. It's yeah, a mixture. I don't know, a mixture of Shakespeare and Python, if you can imagine that. She was caught practicing her foul arts on one of my fine hogs. And then Hawk sort of stands there, and he won't let them move on. "Let her go," he says. And then the bad guy, the villain, is like, "Or else what, my fine friend?" You have to watch it. I don't know. It's like I said it before. You're either going to get it or you're not. It really is that way. It's that kind of movie. I remember once Terry Marcell spoke about making a sequel, which I find very amusing. This was a little while ago. They were going to make a sequel. It was going to be called Hawk the Hunter. And I read somewhere that it was going to star an actor who is very, very famous now. It's going to star Tom Hardy. And the thought of that, I think Tom Hardy was supposed to play Hawk himself. And the thought of Tom Hardy not only being in a Hawk movie, but starring as Hawk, it just makes me laugh. I don't know. There's something very amusing about that. I don't think they get Tom Hardy to do a Hawk the Slayer movie now, but the sequel, I don't believe the sequel is ever. I've not seen any sign of it. So I think the Hawk the Slayer sequel was sadly cancelled. To be honest with you, me personally, as a fan of this movie, I don't really mind, because I would have loved there to have been a sequel to Hawk the Slayer. I would love the sequel to have been made back in the day. So, Hawk the Slayer came out in 83, 84. I think they should have made the sequel back in 88, 89. And they could have had the original actors brought back in. John Terry would still be the right age to play Hawk the Slayer. Gort was played by a British actor called Bernard Bresslaw. Bernard Bresslaw is, in the United Kingdom, he's better known for the Carry On movies. But he did play the Cyclops in Krull. But Bernard Bresslaw would have still been around. He sort of would have been sadly no longer alive anymore. I really feel that the movie needed Bernard Bresslaw in it to play Gort. I thought Bernard Bresslaw was really good as Gort. He was in real life a giant of a man. He really was a big guy, and I really liked him as that character. I think in the movie when Gort has that fight with that bunch of thugs and he beats them all up, you know, he's all over that wagon with that ale inside, and he refuses to fix the wagon, and all these guys get up and they're like, you know, fix the wagon, and Gort is like, "I'd sooner eat cow dung," you know, and the thugs are like, "Well, you can wash it down with your own blood." And Gort just stands there, you know, and he's armed with this massive hammer, That's his primary weapon. It reminds me of those ogres out of Golden Axe, and he stands there and he's like, "So be it." And then what follows is, I think, probably the best choreographed fight in the whole movie. Gort single-handedly defeats, I don't know, about 5 or 6 men, something like that. He just beats them all up, knocks them all down with his hammer, and I think it was the best fight in the movie, the best action scene in the movie. I don't know if that's saying much, but you know, I feel like Gort was a good character, is one of the best characters in the movie, and if you're going to make a sequel, he's going to have to be in it, and he has to be played by Bernard Brittle. So, in other words, they needed to make a sequel to Hulk back in 88, 89, bring back the original cast, make it in the same style, maybe put a bit more money into it, maybe have a bit more, you know, I don't know, expand on the production a little bit, have some more sets, maybe have some fantasy creatures in it. To be honest with you, I would be happy with just another movie just like the original Hulk, just with a bunch of warriors just rambling about and ambling about and getting into fights and getting drunk and arguing over food. I would have been happy with that. And I think if they made a sequel right now, let's just say Terry Marcell's like, okay, let's do another Hulk movie right now, and you know, as of making this video, which is 2022, they make a Hulk Slayer sequel. I don't think it would be done in the spirit of the original Hulk Slayer. I don't think I'd like it personally. I can imagine what it would be like. Low budget, digital camera, something akin to an Asylum Studios film production, something awful like that. It would have a completely different cast of actors, because the actors for the original movie are... They're either dead or they're too old. So they would all have to be recast, and I can just imagine all these just sort of young, fresh-faced, no-names, you know, people I've never seen before, and it wouldn't be Hulk Slayer. It just wouldn't. So it doesn't bother me that there will never be a sequel, because I just think it's too late to do that. However, what I have seen, and this did surprise me, thanks to the wonders of the internet, there are people out there that do enjoy this movie, and I've actually seen a comic book. Someone's actually created a comic book sequel series to Hulk the Slayer. This is very interesting to me. I can see it here. You can buy it on Amazon, and you know what? I might. I'm seriously thinking about buying this. I might as well go for it. I might as well just buy this and have a look at this. I think this would be very interesting. The front cover looks really good. It looks like Hulk the Slayer. I mean, and it looks like it's done in the style of the original movie. There's another cover with Gort on it. It looks really good to me. So I think I will be investing in this, and I might make another video about it, talking about it, maybe even reviewing it. But yeah, I think I've said enough about Hulk the Slayer. I think I've talked enough about it, said all that I can about this movie, said all that there can be said from my point of view. I just wanted to make a little, like a little tribute to it, and just put my voice out there and tell my story of my fondness for this little charming British fantasy movie. Well, that's it, folks. Thanks to anyone who listened, and yeah, I'm heading off, and good luck out there. Wait 1 second, I forgot to mention, Jack Palance plays the nasty, growling villain in the movie, Voltan, who looks a little bit like Darth Vader, I think, with the helmet. I can't believe I forgot to mention Jack Palance was in the movie. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, he's the main villain. He's a bad guy. He's pretty nasty. He's very powerful. Reminds me of, again, I've already said it, Darth Vader. There's a scene where he goes off to a mysterious cave and meets a wizard, sort of a shadowy wizard with a hood on its head, and we don't know much about the wizard, but I got this feel for a kind of Emperor Palpatine, Darth Vader type sort of relationship thing going on. powerful wizard mentoring, the upcoming warrior who's going to take over the evil empire. I got that kind of vibe, and the movie ends with Voltan. Spoiler alert, Voltan does get cut down, right? He does die at the end of the movie. And the evil wizard comes along and takes his body away and hints at resurrecting Voltan from death. It throws the idea of a sequel right in your face. Voltan is gonna be back. He's gonna come back from the dead and he's gonna challenge Hawk to another deadly duel by the sword. Sadly, it never happened, but maybe it will happen in the comics. And also, the soundtrack for the movie is brilliant. It's crazy. You have to listen to it. Just go onto YouTube and YouTube it and listen to it. It's a sort of like pop disco type soundtrack. Very odd. Anachronistic. Absolutely completely out of place in what is ostensibly a medieval dark age fantasy movie, but there you go. The music for Hawk the Slayer is great. Check it out. Alright, that's all I've got to say about that subject. You can leave the house now. Goodbye.